It looks like that everybody that was in the waiting room has been admitted. So I'll go ahead and welcome you all. We are so glad that you joined us today for our November webinar with the Kentucky Advising Academy. The Kentucky Advising Academy is an initiative of the Council on Post-Secondary Education. And again, we are thrilled that you're here with us, and we hope today that you will get some great information that you can put to immediate use. My name is Mitzi Holland, and I am the director of the Kentucky Advising Academy, and I'm joined today with several of our regional coordinators, as well as our special guest presenter, Mr. Dallas Kratzer. Dallas is a senior fellow of policy development for the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and he will lead our discussion today on military options. And I'm going to hand it over to one of our regional coordinators, Christy Miller, and she will facilitate today's webinar. Again, thank you for joining us and hope you get some great info.
Well, good morning, everyone. And we want to know a little bit about who's here. So please take a moment to introduce yourselves in the chat. We would love to have your name, organization, title, and just for fun, tell us this. When it comes to your favorite Thanksgiving feast, who wins, turkey or ham? Turkey, okay. Definitely. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you, everyone. We know that you have a million plates spinning. So again, we really appreciate you for making time to be with us today. ELA credit will be available for our webinar, and I will give you details on how to receive that at the end of our time together. On the agenda for today is a brief introduction of the Kentucky Advising Academy, and then I will turn it over to Dallas, who will give you information about military service options. At any time, if you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We will share those questions with Dallas, and if we don't get them all answered during the webinar, we will send you an email with your question answered. And lastly, we will go over some ways to stay connected with KAA. Remember, you must stay until the end of this webinar and complete the survey to earn ELA credit. So I want to start by sharing the purpose of the Kentucky Advising Academy, and then I will give you some brief information on how we came to be. Next, I'll share our structure of services before turning it over to our presenter for today. You'll see the purpose of the Kentucky Advising Academy here on the slide. We exist to provide support to school counselors and really all professional educators who find themselves in a post-secondary advising role. This could be teachers, coaches, club sponsors, Frisky coordinators, and community partners. It's important for us to expand the idea of who counts as a post-secondary advisor, because we know that no one person can do it all when it comes to helping students navigate this vital process. We develop professional learning and resources in order to help build knowledge, capacity, and community around post-secondary advising process. We were born out of a committee recommendation from the Commonwealth Education Continuum, which I will refer to as the CEC. The CEC is a joint initiative between Lieutenant Governor Jacqueline Coleman, Education Commissioner Dr. Jason Glass, and our very own Council on Post-Secondary Education President, Dr. Aaron Thompson. They put together an all-star group of state-level stakeholders representing P through 12 and on through the workforce to identify that where the leaks were in the pipeline. And ultimately, they are taking actionable steps to plug those leaks and help Kentuckians navigate transitions more smoothly so that overall quality of life is improved. Our strategic agenda North Star, is 60 by 30, which means we want 60% of Kentuckians to have a post-secondary credential by the year 2030. And that includes a 2 or 4-year degree or certification. One of the CEC subcommittees recognized the need for supporting school counselors and other educators with post-secondary advising, and that is where the Kentucky Advising Academy began. We want our professional learning to accomplish 3 goals. And that is to build post-secondary advising knowledge, capacity, and community. Monthly, we offer Well Advised, a brief podcast covering timely post-secondary advising topics such as college admissions, financial aid, scholarships, and more. And we also offer this monthly webinar, which will be related to the podcast topic, giving practitioners a chance to convene and gather ideas from each other. We will also be offering informational tips and spotlighting advising practices throughout the state. We also will hold full-day, regionally based, in-person professional learning events this spring at a KCTCS campus near you. Finally, we are building a comprehensive online advising toolkit, and we'll give more information about this later. Our regional advising coordinators, here we are, and we would love to have you join us in all of these opportunities. So I will let you know how to stay connected at the end of our time together. Okay, so here's why we're here today. With us more to tell us about the military as a post-secondary option and service decisions is Dallas Kratzer. Dallas, if you'd like to introduce yourself, you can take it away.
All right. Great to be here with you all today. I appreciate what you do in our communities because you make a difference in so many ways. And the chance to share a little bit of my life with you and what's gone on. If you've seen the podcast, you've heard some of it, but I'm going to kind of go back over some of those things so that you know where I'm coming from and understand my perspectives. I first went in the military immediately out of high school. Hadn't planned on it, wasn't on my radar, but once I went, it became something that just, well, I would almost say took over my life because it did. I did about 35 years in the Air Force, and that's a long time. That's a lifetime for some folks. But in that time, got a great chance to do some amazing things. I come from a very small town. I do live here in Kentucky now, but I'm originally from Ohio. We love Kentucky. In 2001, we came to Kentucky and fell in love with it. And my wife and I have decided this is our retirement home, so we are going to stay here forever. But the Air Force helped facilitate that move because I became an Air Force ROTC instructor at the University of Louisville. Did that for quite a while, ended up getting into the world of credit for prior learning, so I do a lot of stuff in that area. But while I was doing ROTC, I had a chance to talk with a lot of high school students about getting into the military, a lot of folks who had already left high school, but maybe were in college or wanted to see something different. I worked during that time also with the Air Force Academy to help students get into any of the academies. You might not remember, what was her name? Ann Northup was the congressional leader at that time. I sat on her panel doing interviews for individuals to go to academies, the Air Force Academy, the West Point, up to Annapolis, all of them. So I've been involved with students quite a bit. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of the things that I've learned over the years. And let's just kind of jump into it. As you have questions, throw them out there in the chat. We'll knock them out left and right and see what we can come up with. No question is a silly question. Actually, there is a silly question. It's the one you don't ask. All right. If you don't ask it, then we can't address it. So let's talk a little bit about the armed forces. There are a lot of thoughts out there. Let me ask you guys first, if you would, just using the reaction button, raise your hand if you have military connection in any way, shape, or form. Family members, anything like that. Or yeah, Ryan, I saw you raise your hand there. That's great. Yep. Okay, cool. Great. Good number of folks. Oh, Denise, you were in 23 years in the Army. Fantastic. Thank you for serving. All right. And I want to talk also just a little bit about how we might be able to get other military folks into teaching opportunities. All right. So for those of you that are veterans like Denise, thank you. This is Veterans Day is coming up, and it is quite a commitment to go out and join and then commit a large part of your life to it, or even just a small part, because the military is a different world. It's a different culture and community, but an incredibly valuable one. So let's talk about this a little bit. Denise identified herself as being in the Army. We do have the 6 elements of the military. I want to talk a little bit about that, though, because like the Army, they also have the Army National Guard and the Army Reserve. The National Guard shows up in both the Air Force and the Army, and the reserves show up in not only the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, Marine Corps, and somewhat in the Coast Guard too. The Coast Guard is a little different. We're going to talk a little bit about them. So those reservist Guard and Reserve members, they serve 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. But since 9/11, it really hasn't been just 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. It's a pretty consistent thing. They're always involved in different ways because the active duty has seen how the reserve brings such capacity in also. The Navy, they don't have a National Guard because they are our National Guard. Here's a unique entry and interesting thing about it. Each branch has a element that they do, and the Army and the Navy have always been in a little bit of a competition because they are the early adopters. They've been around for a long time. The Army is about occupation of a territory to protect it. The Navy is about maintaining sea lines or lines of communication, mainly on the sea. So that's their job, is to protect our waterways. Well, the Coast Guard protects the waterways inside the boundary of the United States, which is why they fall up under the Department of Homeland Security. They used to be under the Department of Transportation because they guard the coastline and they guard the waterways within the country. All right. However, that's not all they do. The Navy takes care of the blue water area. The Coast Guard has expanded their role to where they're in just about everything that if they have land and they can get out to the water, that's where they are. So that's why you see really cool movies where you have people jumping out of Coast Guard helicopters to rescue people, because it's a coastline event, but it's out in the ocean because the distance is 12 miles out, and then you go into international water. The Coast Guard is all around the world too. So they have stations everywhere: Japan, Guam, Europe. So they interact a lot with us. Now, that takes us down to the Marines. The Marines are a little different in the fact that they are the smallest branch in the military. But to hear them talk, they're a small dog with a big bark. All right. They are awesome. Now, they say the Navy is around to haul them around, because when you look at the Navy or the Marine Corps SEAL, it says they are a department of the Navy. So they work for the Navy, but they don't say it that way. They have the Navy to haul them around, haul their equipment around. The Navy says, no, we just have you around to protect us because we don't have to carry guns and all that stuff. You do. So a little bit of inter-service rivalry, and you'll hear that a lot because that's our culture and community. We all have a little rivalry going on. Everybody wants to talk about the chair force, and that's okay. We don't mind. We know you're jealous, okay? Because I did 35 years in the Air Force. The Air Force is like a Fortune 500 company in a lot of ways, and that's how we work. But I will say this. I deployed with the Army to Afghanistan, and it was the highlight of my Air Force career. After 30 years of service, went and did that. I fired a weapon more in 1 week with the Army in training than I did in 30 years in the Air Force. So it was pretty exciting. That last one down there, Space Force, they are the new kids on the block, and they are growing and stretching out. They're going to be growing, expanding even more in the future, particularly in the cyber area. And Michelle, I see your comment. Yeah, everybody knows the Air Force is the best, but they just like to poke us. Okay, because we are, it's better accommodations. Let me put it that way. It's fun stuff. But the other branches are fast followers. You know, when the Air Force showed up in Iraq with air conditioners for their tents and stuff like that, the Army's like, why don't we have air conditioners in our tents? Well, you can. You just buy them and bring them. So they started buying them and bringing them and changing the quality of life. Space Force is going to be outside of the planet, but to get outside of the planet, you have to launch from the planet. So we're really excited to see what's going to happen there. I think as counselors, you may hear a lot of young folks being interested in the Space Force area, and they are space cadets. They're called the Guardians. No connection to the Guardians of the Galaxy, but really that's where they're headed. Okay, there's going to be a lot of comedy out of there because when you're in an academy, you're called a cadet. So the cadets at West Point, the cadets at the Air Force Academy, then you're going to have the space cadets also with Space Force. So yeah, they brought it on themselves, you know, big name like that. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Enough of that stuff. In the military, we are a caste system. We have a very clear line of delineation between our enlisted and our officer corps. And we need to do that because of the mission that we have. We expect certain things from our team members, the folks who are working together. And though there is a differentiation between enlisted and officer, we work together. We work just like in any other business. Our enlisted folks tend to be more of the blue collar at the junior ranks. As they get into the senior ranks, they become those senior managers who really are more of a white collar job, but yet they have that origin out of the enlisted side. Enlisted members have a different kind of basic training than officers do. Officers are the ones who have completed a college degree and have gone into specialty fields, medical, legal, the chaplaincy, and then the traditional officers like I was when I was in, and we do the leading of the organization. So in a unit, you'll have a lot of enlisted folks and only a handful of officers, or maybe even sometimes just one officer. With that, we work together. It's just like any other business for all the branches. It's very similar. The big thing with the enlisted is they are the boots on the ground. They do the hard work. There are a lot of career fields. I just did a symposium yesterday, and one of the things we talked about is that we're not all soldiers, all right? In the military, people want to always call us soldiers, no matter what branch you're in. No, we're each called something different, but there is an enlisted capacity and an officer capacity. So just knowing the difference between those two. For the enlisted folks, you can go into the military with a high school or GED and you'll be an enlisted person. If you want to be an officer, you have to have a college degree. That's just the way it is. All right. And in that college degree, depending what your specialty is the level. For example, you can go into the military as a nurse. You only need an ADN, which is what I like to call an associate degree on steroids. All right. Because you're going to do about 3 years of college to get that ADN degree. If you want to go in as a helicopter pilot, you have to have some college and then complete your associate degree within the first 4 years that you're being a helicopter pilot. Other than that, the majority have to have a 4-year degree. You may have a lot of students that come in and they say, I know this happened for me when I taught ROTC. Hey, I want to be a pilot. I'm like, okay. So how many times have you seen Top Gun? And they'd say, oh, I've seen it a dozen times. Okay. You know, first of all, this is the Air Force. That's the Navy, Top Gun. And second of all, you have to have a college degree to get through that. Once you do that, then we'll look at sending you to pilot training. And it's a very small number. If you remember earlier, I talked about the Army and the Navy. They each have their own Air Force, if you will. We were birthed out of the Army and the Navy, so much so that when the Air Force came on in 1947, 48, we were so new that all we did was we took the Army dress uniform and turned it blue instead of brown. And we wore that for years and years and years. Then we finally got somebody who changed the uniform, and then we started looking like bus drivers. But we've gotten better than that, okay? With that enlisted side. In that symposium I was doing yesterday, and we were talking about not everyone is a soldier, not everyone is in the infantry. If you go as an enlisted person, if you go to the Army, you start off as an infantry person because you're a soldier. You're going to learn how to do that. But if you go to the Air Force or the Navy or Marine Corps, the Marines tend to be a little bit more infantry also. You're going to have a different perspective. For the Air Force, we're going to focus on a specific career field that we want you to go in. There are over 70 different types of career fields someone can go into. So anything we have in the civilian sector, we have in the military sector also. The military is a microcosm of society. So you're going to see the same types of jobs there, and we need people to fill those jobs. On the officer side, again, think of those managers, white collar, folks who are at the top of the pyramid doing certain things, or middle managers, and then they rise above that also. There is a significant difference in the pay. As an enlisted person, you're going to come in at about $10 to $15 an hour, but that's just the bottom. You know, we don't pay for healthcare. We don't pay for living quarters as a young person. And if we do live off of the military installation, then we're going to be compensated with pay that is not taxed. So the number really is right around $15 to $17 an hour is what a junior enlisted person is going to make as they first go in. If you go to college and you're an officer, once you graduate from college, you're going to start at about $45,000 to $50,000 a year. Okay. Two important things that students need to know about that: the pay and the training. Very different. The basic training is different because you're looking at two different groups of folks. Yes, it is rigorous, but we tell our folks today, look, basic training is not the reality of what you'll do in the military. This is a place where we weed out some folks, but we tear them down to build them back up the way we want them to serve. When I went in back right out of high school, I was adrift. I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. I got in the military and I found my purpose. And it was something I wasn't even on my radar. My first job in the military, I was an admin guy, and my job was Radar O'Reilly. If you've ever watched MASH, I was Radar. That was my job. Okay, I typed up the paperwork, I took care of the boss, all this stuff. I couldn't type. I dropped out of typing class in high school. Got in the Air Force. It was magic. I became a typist, and I got all the way up to 80 some words a minute with no errors, and that was just unbelievable because that's not me. And I found my home. So that's why we tear them down to build them up and for them to see their full potential. I wasn't a good student, but the military changed that for me. And I ended up going, and I started off as an enlisted guy, did that for 15 years, and then moved over to the officer side after I realized I needed to do that. That's really where I needed to be. And it opened up the door after I finished my bachelor's degree. I earned a couple of master's degrees and eventually finished my PhD there at U of L. So just amazing stuff. So Anastasia, you wanted to go in the Marine Corps. Yeehaw, that's tough stuff. But we have medical requirements and considerations that we have to go in. And part of the reason the Marine Corps didn't take you on is when the military takes you in, they buy you, all right? And they buy all of the challenges that you bring to the table. And we want to make sure that we don't put people in harm's way. In your situation, it was because you had an injured back. For some folks, if they have something like asthma is a disqualifier. And the reason it's a disqualifier is sometimes, and we do train to go into very hazardous environments. And if you're putting a gas mask on and you have an asthmatic episode, when you take that gas mask off, you become a danger to everyone around you, not just the enemy. Actually, you become a resource to the enemy. Because our people are going to try to take care of you. You're part of our team. You're a member. So those are the challenges there. All right. So let's move on along here a little bit. Let's talk about the Guard and Reserve. Christy, I jumped ahead of you in saying that. Let's go back one slide for a second, and I've touched on a couple of things. I want to cover the reserve component. That's that 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. They are just as full up qualified as enlisted and officers on active duty. They're just doing it a different way. So they go to the same training, the same basic training, the same career field training. And as they go to that career field training, They have to step away from their civilian life for a while, and then they come back. And a lot of these students, a lot of these folks will come back and serve as students. So they'll go to colleges. You're going to be advising them there, how they can go forward. Some of them will go into ROTC, which is on the next slide. We're going to talk about that in a minute, to then go back to the active duty. And that's sort of what I did. I went back to active duty after I got my commission, did a lot of cool stuff, retired out, and now I get to do cool stuff like this. So that reserve component is a very viable option for students who want to have that military experience, but they also want to be back home in their area, because for the Guard here in Kentucky, the Army Guard and the Air Guard are all around our communities. Okay, so you're Anastasia, you're in the reserves now, it looks like. Oh, yeah, deployed more than your brother. So here's the thing with the reservist and the Guard members. The active duty will ask for help, and Guard members can volunteer or be voluntold. So this is part of our language in the military. Voluntold is a real thing, all right? And the way they do that is they go, you know, we would really like for you to go on this deployment, okay? They're not asking, okay? They're telling you, get ready. We're going to tell you you're going on this deployment. So that's just how the military operates. We try to let people think that they have say over certain things, and they do to an extent. It's a lot different than when I first went in, but there's still a lot of times that they tell you, you have to go. And when you're voluntold, that's what you do, because that's what we signed up for. So the reserve is a great component for high school students who are not quite sure where they want to go from in school to where they want to go to in their civilian life and as they grow up. So now, Christy, let's go to the next slide. I jumped, that sent a confusing message. Let's talk more about this academic side, the ROTC versus the military academy. Both are great institutions. We have multiple ones. One is easier to get in than the other. Both are very competitive. ROTC, first of all, and you see it, the bullet there at the bottom, junior ROTC is a high school program that is different from college ROTC. I want to make it really clear. Junior ROTC is not about recruiting people into the military. Junior ROTC is character development, helping students to develop their character and their world perspective. So the junior ROTC is going to expose them to a lot of self-awareness type of things, so that they understand who they are and the responsibilities as a citizen. Whereas when you go into the college ROTC program, you are in a recruiting program. You are going to the military if you stay with it. But not everyone that goes into the ROTC sees it all the way through. And there are some catches in there too. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. So having said that about the junior ROTC, as advisors, I would encourage you, those students that need a little bit more personal development, talk to them about joining the junior ROTC. It's a great program. It'll expose them to a lot of things, and it will help you develop their personality a little bit more. Because the thing is, students, when they're in high school, they are trying on a lot of different coats to see who they're going to be, a lot of different traits and personalities. And this is just one of them. It is not about getting them into the military, but it will show them a little bit of our military and our history. And it will give them an idea of why our country does the things the way that it does. So it's a great character development thing. And it's open to any student, students with disabilities, students or challenges, students who have no interest in the military, okay? So it's just a great way to get to know more. Also, back to the college level, the ROTC is a program that will help students pay for their college as they go through college by being part of the ROTC. They are offered a scholarship based on their competition. They need to start this application before their freshman year, all right? And by that, I mean that they need to look at leadership opportunities, being involved in different activity, maybe a sport, but maybe not, okay? There are other things. Work is actually a positive when you go in for an ROTC interview. If you're working but not in a sport, that shows a different set of ethics and core values that we value. You don't actually apply for this until your junior year in high school, but we want to go back and see a history starting in your freshman year of growth and what you're doing. I had one student that I interviewed, and he wasn't in any sports. He was not in any clubs. I'm like, so what do you do? And one of the things on his application, he had put that he was managing a band. Like, tell me more about this. He had a group of friends in school that he had grown up with, and they developed a band, and this band would go out and perform in different areas. He was their manager. He would set up their gigs. He would coordinate transportation. He would look at pay. So he managed their finances. Like, this is great stuff. He ended up getting a invitation to the Air Force for ROTC. I don't know if he took it because it wasn't at my school, but we have schools all across the country with ROTC units in them. Some of the leading ones here in Kentucky, University of Louisville, University of Kentucky, Western University, NKU has got some crosstowns. K-State's got crosstowns. KCTCS school systems have crosstown agreements with major ROTC. So when I was at U of L, we had a crosstown with JCTC. We had a crosstown with, I don't think it was BCTC is connected with UK. So those students at those schools could come to U of L twice a week to do their ROTC classes. And that's what they're doing while they're in college. They go to two classes a week with the ROTC, and then they're just a traditional student from there on out. But we pay their tuition. We pay them a monthly stipend. We pay for their books. So just a lot of great opportunities there. Here's a little known secret that you might want to use with some folks. You can apply for and earn a ROTC scholarship. Go your first year, and they're going to pay your tuition, and all that money's going to come your way. And then you can go, you know what? Not for me. And you don't have to pay any of that money back. Okay. That student can do the whole ROTC their freshman year and then decide before the first day of their sophomore year, which is the third bullet down there, fourth bullet down. They can decide before the first day of their sophomore year that it's not for them, and then decline the scholarship, and they don't have to pay any of that money back. Now you're thinking, oh, wait, why would the military do this? Okay. Because we know if we get them in there that first year, we're going to get a chance to look at them. They're going to get a chance to look at us, and they may stay. In the 5 years that I did ROTC at U of L, I had 3 students that walked away with the money. All right. I had a lot more of them that stayed because there's a sense of camaraderie and family, and they find out that being in the military is much more than just being a soldier, okay? Being infantry. It really is. You know, when you come out of the ROTC, you go into a position as a lieutenant, which is an officer, starting at that $45,000, $50,000 a year, and you are managing teams and resources in the millions of dollars. Most folks, when they first come out of their degree, they don't get an opportunity like that. So it's pretty amazing. Now, the academy on the other side, same setup, but the academies are their own college programs, and they can go in there and it takes over their life. It's like basic training for 5 years. All right. It's not that bad, but it sure seems like it because you're wearing the uniform all the time. You have a heavier course load there in the second bullet. They're averaging 21 to 22 hours a semester when they go to the academy. And the reason for this is because they're there full time. So it's their whole life. They live at the academy, they eat at the academy, they're in school. And some of their courses aren't like our traditional college courses, but the majority are. And they're getting a degree in a specific area, which let me go back for just a second to ROTC. ROTC, you can be any degree program. I had one guy who was an art major. He was in the business of buying and selling art. So he was a art major in business, and he got a ROTC scholarship for that. He completed the program, and he went in and he was what is called a CCT. And a CCT is a person who combat controllers, and their job is to crawl into a really rough situation and then call in weapons to be unloaded on an enemy or on a structure or something like that. So how do you go from being an art major to a CCT guy that's calling in bombs, from 500 yards out? I don't know, but he loved it. I mean, it was great. And same thing though, you can do any kind of degree that the Academy offers. It is a 5-year commitment once you get out. If you're in ROTC, it's a 4-year commitment once you leave ROTC. If you become a pilot in either one of these two, that's a 10-year commitment. And if you're a doctor, if you're doing pre-med or anything like that, it is an 11 to 12-year commitment because of the residency requirements. But you walk away with 0 academic debt. Okay, if you take in either program, if you take out any student loans, that's on you, but all of your academic courses will be paid for and you'll be compensated for that. The academies have a congressional appointment, so you have to be involved. We have people all across the country who help students get into this program. So one of the things I would encourage you to do as a counselor is to work with those in your community who are there to help you, either recruiters or these academic or academy advisors who can help you guide your students. All right, it takes all of us to work together and to help out. The academy, another interesting thing about them is as people come in, they typically go straight from high school into the academy. But let's say they decided to go ROTC. In their first and second year of ROTC, early in the second year, they're given the opportunity to go to the academy if they choose. So they can leave ROTC and go to the academy. The nice thing about that is they have 2 years, a year to 2 years of college already that they can roll to the academy because it's a transfer student, just like any other system, and it will reduce their course load for the rest of their academy commitment. The thing is they start at ground zero at the academy. They start over basically, but they start over with college. Now, if you have students that are doing dual credit, it lessens what they have to do at the college level. So recommend to them, get that dual credit while they're in high school. Work with the KCTCS schools to knock out maybe some IT stuff or to get some gen eds out of the way, to do AP studies, to do dual credit, because it will get them through their ROTCs if they're going to be an officer, their academy much quicker. So they can, I recommend to students apply to both the ROTCs, all of the ROTCs, and to all the academies, because if you get multiple offers, that's fantastic. We plan for that. If you get one, all right, you're in. Knowing that if you're in, then you have some flexibility. We had people come from the Army ROTC to the Air Force ROTC. We had people leave the Air Force ROTC to go to the Merchant Marine Academy, which is a cool, way cool academy. And in the Merchant Marine Academy, they can go, once they finish their degree, they can commission in any branch that they want to of the military. And each of the branches, that's the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, the Marine Corps, so on and so forth. So a lot of opportunity. Have them get in there. As an ROTC instructor, I was trained to teach them and talk them through all those options because we want the best for the student. And sometimes we see students that don't fit and we recommend to them, or they medically something happens. We tell them, look, take this experience and use it to look at civil service or to look at federal, working within the federal government or the state government. You're going to be a better citizen by having this experience. All right. Whew, any questions about ROTC while we're here? All right, if you have them, throw them out there. We can come back around to them if we need to. And so the next thing, other things as advisors, be familiar with all the branches. We're coming up on Veterans Day. You're going to hear a lot of people talk about a lot of things. We have a lot of veterans here in Kentucky. People don't realize, but on average, we have between 2,000 and 3,000 service members that come back to Kentucky to after they leave the military. I'm trying to read that chat that just went in there. So Kayla, yeah, your father couldn't medically do it, but went on to do other military things associated. So yes, the military industry is actually the #1 industry in Kentucky. People don't realize this. The federal government, through the Department of Defense, is the #1 military installation or financer is. Anybody want to guess? I'm going to tell you. Nope, not Fort Knox and Fort Campbell. Believe it or not, it's Humana. Humana has the TRICARE program, which is the medical program that takes care of all military personnel and families outside of a military installation. It's huge, billions of dollars. Now, Fort Knox, Fort Campbell bring a lot of money too, yes, and are pretty obvious because they wear uniforms, but this is how the civilian sector is so integrated into what our military community does. By being familiar with the branches coming up on Veterans Day, it gives you a chance to learn how to talk with your students about it because they have a lot of interest. And unfortunately, Hollywood plays a big part in how our military is perceived, and it's not like that. You know, my wife will not watch military related things with me on TV because as they're doing things, I'm like, no, that is not how that goes. All right. So, yeah, get familiar with them, talk with them, learn the culture. Here's a recommendation. You see psycharmor.org. Denise, I see. Yeah, you probably can't watch those military shows either with people. Psych Armor is a nonprofit that was developed by a military spouse who said, I need to help the civilians understand the military. Psych Armor's mission is to help educators and employers to better understand the military culture and the military environment, to include military dependents, spouses, kids, caregivers, and they do it for free. And I'm just going to recommend go out to Psych Armor and look up 15 things that military people want you to know. You'll be amazed at some of the things that they talk about. It's a great little video vignette, 15 minutes long. It will up your game in talking about the military. Another thing to keep in mind, the military is incredibly high tech. If you go in, the first thing you're getting is your email. We operate off of email. We do texting. We do not do TikTok because the Chinese are watching. Be careful with that. And other skills are highly technical. Everything we do has a component in IT. If you want to help a student go in a direction, talk to them about Google IT. Google IT through Coursera has a program that they can get a Google professional certificate. I'm doing a pilot project at Anderson County High School with a good friend of mine. He went through the Google course for free. It's free for community colleges and high schools until December of 24, to where students can work through, earn this degree, and KDE here in Kentucky will allow them to sit for the A+ certification by CompTIA. If you do the Google IT, you can come out of high school, if you've got that certificate, at about $40,000 a year income, because Google IT hires people to do that. If you do the CompTIA A+ certification, you're at the 50-60 range. And you can do the fundamentals of IT, which is another good certification. KDE pays for that test for you. It's a $500 test, and they will pay for any high school student that's met the qualifications, Google IT, to do that. So we're doing this at Anderson County High School, but wait, there's more. Not only do you get the certificate, not only do you have the opportunity for great jobs, but it was also evaluated by the American Council on Education, and they identified it as 12 credit hours at the associate level for an IT degree. And BCTC has already looked at this, and they're like, yes, we will use 9 of those hours to complete your first year of an IT degree in our program. So great stuff. They can do this, they can get this training, they can earn this 9 hours at BCTC and be on their way to completing a college degree while they're in high school. But wait, there's more. If they go into the military, into that IT field, there's their initial training, they earn another 17 credit hours toward that completion of an associate degree in IT. So they could be at 26 hours by doing Google IT and the military IT program in their first year out of high school. That's almost equivalent to 1 year of college. And they're getting their military paycheck, and they're getting their military health care, and they're getting a chance to see more of the country. Because trust me, the military moves you around. If you want to move a lot, go to all over. There are other ways to do that too. The Navy will send you all over the world, but your family can stay in one spot. All right, last thing there, no drugs and alcohol. You just got to tell them up front. And another thing I always told my students that I advise that they need to stay away from the opposite sex or relationships that will slow them down in their academic career or their military career. Relationships slow down that growth, okay? And I am being snarky and kind of funny, but both my sons, they got the college thing because they watched dad walk across the stage at 33, getting his bachelor's degree. They were 9 and 12, and they're like, nope, not doing it that way, Dad. They went straight to college. The oldest one got it done in 4 years, which was great. The youngest one took him 4.5 years. Why? There was this girl involved. And they got married in his senior year, so it stretched him out another semester. It's just the way it is, okay? I saw a question come up, but I was telling that story, which I really like to tell. What if they do dual credit? Will there be graduating with an AD? They can. They could very possibly graduate with an associate degree. Do it. If you can, great, because if they want to go in the military, then they only have to do 2 years of ROTC. That gets them through even quicker, all right? If they go to the academies, they're that much further along. And in our workforce, bonus, all right? Let's see, must be a good student and morally and ethically bound. Now, here's the thing. No student should disqualify themselves, okay? Back to this medical issue. One of the challenges I saw as a academic advisor or a recruiter for them to go into the military, sometimes they would say, well, you know, I have childhood asthma. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Well, you know, I was breathing hard. My grandma says it sounds like I have asthma. Grandma's not a doctor, unless grandma really is a doctor, okay? And they make sure the people that are making the call are making the right call. Go to your doctor and get it done, all right? Don't go on what grandma says. And from this point forward, unless you have a doctor saying this, don't ever bring up the word asthma again, because it's a disqualifier, okay? And that's what I would tell them, yeah. And we're going to find out because they have to go through a medical evaluation. And great question, Denise. Yes, if you come in with college credit, here again, this is why you want your students to do dual credit, you can go up. And what happens is the branch, when you enlist as an enlisted person, if you have no college, you come in as what's called an E1. If you come in with some college, you can be offered an opportunity to be an E2 or an E3, depending on how much college you've had, so that once you complete that initial basic training, you immediately go to that rank, which is a pay bump. Everything's a pay bump. Those numbers are pay grades. You can get that benefit much quicker and use it. It helps them to advance in their career, because if you're an E1, it takes about a year to year and a half to move to E2, and then another year and a half to move to E3. You can speed to where in your first 6 months, you go to E3, and then you reap the benefit of that money. All right. Always don't let them disqualify themselves. Let them talk to a military professional who knows the system. Recruiters are not allowed to be illegal, immoral, or unethical. If you have one that's acting that way, you need to let somebody know. You all have my email address. Let me know. I'll flip the switch in a heartbeat, because we have had problems in the past. We don't have those problems today because we're holding them to a higher level of accountability. Every branch has had a problem with it. When you're interacting with students, people make dumb decisions, okay? It's in every career field. So let the student talk to a professional. Invite your recruiters in, sit and talk with them, okay? Get to know them so you can trust them. They do change every 3 years. But your Guard and Reserve recruiters are maybe even your better assets, because they're going to be there for a longer duration, and they live in your community, so you can find where they live and go find and track them down. They can talk about active duty and Guard and Reserve. All right, so do both of those. Now, another great comment. Let's see, who made that comment? I think it was Denise. Oh, Michelle. Okay, Michelle, let's talk about that military benefit of the GI Bill. It's a great resource. When you go in, you have to have more than 180 days of active duty for other than training purposes to get that GI Bill. All right. But when you get that GI Bill, it's a benefit in the fact that it's a recruiting benefit to attract you to come to the military. It's not a benefit because you served, like healthcare. In that it's a recruiting tool, it has some different qualifiers on it. And one of the most unique ones is that if you have GI Bill money and you're not going to use it, you can transfer it to a family member, a spouse or a child, a stepson or daughter. You can move that around at different times in your career, but you have to have time on your military service to be able to do that. For me, and I know I'm coming up on time here, we're supposed to be done at 11, so I'm going to get there quickly. My wife took my GI Bill when I deployed to Afghanistan because I hadn't used it. I had a PhD, wasn't going to use any more of it. All right. And our grandson was born, and she was like, oh, he was in the NICU. She's like, I always wanted to be a nurse. I'm like, I'm going to Afghanistan. You're going to be bored. We're empty nesters. Take the rest of my GI Bill, go to school and become a nurse. And she did. At 49, she started nursing school. She used my GI Bill. It paid for almost all of her nursing school. She got some great benefits out of it. And at 52, she became a nurse. And at 52, I retired from the military. So I started staying home, and she went and did nursing stuff at UK. So what a deal. You can do that with your children here in Kentucky, as in Indiana, as you mentioned in here, Michelle. There are states that have benefits that if you are 100% disabled, then your family members can go to any state school for 100% tuition remission. So they can go to college for free. I've got a buddy just came out of the Navy 3 years ago. He's got 7 kids. 7 kids can go to a state school and complete a certificate or degree. All right. Just a lot of different benefits. Now let's quickly talk about ASVAB. This is just a aptitude test, like any other aptitude test. Just need to make sure that they understand that. It doesn't mean that they're going to be a perfect fit, but it identifies a career field that you might want to go to. So have everyone take it because it'll help them see what area of specialty they might work well in. I didn't realize I was going to be an admin guy, but I scored really high in that, and it was right. It is a good thing. For translating military jobs into civilian language, go to ONET, okay, Occupational Net. It's put out by the Department of Labor. It gives you a crosswalk for military and civilian jobs, and it'll help explain that. And it takes a lot to help these folks determine their path, but we want to do that. So to do that, you need to be educated. And one of the things I would encourage you to do is if you ever get an educator's tour opportunity, go do it, because you're going to get a chance to see what it looks like to be an ROTC cadet or what it might be like in the military. And with that, I'm going to stop here. Christina, I'm going to turn it. I think we got, yep, there. Turn it back to you guys. I can keep talking. I will share more anytime, anyway. You guys will have my email. So back to you.
Thank you so much, Dallas. You've shared so much, and I've learned a whole lot here. If you have any questions, if you'll just drop those in the chat, and we'll get those to Dallas and he can answer those, and we will send out the answers to any of those questions that anyone has in the chat to everyone. And know that you're also going to get a copy of this presentation. So, I mean, you've shared a lot, and I could listen for a whole lot longer. So I really appreciate you being here. So any questions, if you'll just go ahead and put that in the chat. So as we are ending our time together, I want to encourage you to stay connected with KAA. Our December webinar will be here sooner than you know it, and we'll be talking about workforce readiness. And you can use the QR code here to register. And we're also dropping the link in the chat. So I'll give you just a second. Some of you may have had the opportunity to join us for our fall professional learning series. And so just want you to know that we are working on the spring ones right now. And those are going to be held at the end of February, the beginning of March. And if you were not able to join us for the fall professional learning, it is okay. You can come to the spring one and you'll be just on time for that. And it's tailored for school counselors, for Frisky coordinators, post-secondary advisors, administrators, community partners, and others. So if you have a colleague you think that might benefit from this, we encourage you to invite them. And you will get ELA and Frisky credit for attending that, and that will be for 6 hours. And so from our website, which was sent in the chat, you can also subscribe to our communications, which will be updates on when our podcasts and webinars are going to be coming out, as well as our emails and in-person events. You can follow us on any of the social media accounts. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you can find this presentation in about a week on YouTube. If you will just Google or put in YouTube Kentucky Advising Academy. All right, ELA credit, here we go. For your ELA credit, please scan this QR code or use the link on the screen to complete the form. We are also adding this link in the chat, and we will use this form to get your email and send you your certificate of ELA credit. And if you need to do a screenshot or take a picture, then feel free to do that. Dallas, again, we are so grateful for the time that you've given us today. And we hope we can see you at future events, Dallas, and for the rest of you all who are joining us. So we thank you for your participation. Put your questions in the chat. Remember, if you need to do that. And we hope that you have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.